So there is a new poll out that was conducted on behalf of the Committee to Unleash Prosperity, which divided respondents between elites, people with at least one postgraduate degree, earning more than $50,000 and living in zip codes where the population density exceeds 10,000 people per square mile. And then they put everybody else in the general public, okay? So you had to have at least one postgraduate degree, $150,000 job plus, and live in a zip code that's high density, okay? Everybody else was not considered elite. They then recorded the responses of a subset of super elites and elites. Now, the super elites were those who graduated from the prestigious private universities, the Ivy League, Duke, Stanford, Northwestern, and that made you a super elite. Wait until you hear what they found. It's not going to come as a surprise, but 73% of the upper class, the super elites, and the elites consider themselves Democrats and approve of Joe Biden's performance at 84%. So 73% of the super elites and the elites are Democrats, and by 84%, that 73% loves Joe Biden's work. Now that's surface level. Listen to this. 74% of the elites and 88% of the super elites report their personal finances are on the upswing. Not a surprise, right? The bulk of those who remain say they're either unsure or they're getting neither better nor worse. Then there is just a negligible portion of respondents that say their pocketbooks are getting lighter. Now that's all in the elites. Compare that to the Americans more generally, the rest of the people in the survey that don't fit into those categories I just explained. It's hard to believe they're living in the same country. We are becoming more and more divided in our country with everything, with absolutely everything. 40% of Americans say their financial situation is worsening, and only 20% say it's improving. So those who are elites, they all say it's getting good. 88% say it's on the upswing. 20% of the regular people say it's improving. 40% say it's getting bad. Now, let's look into the rest. The class disproportionately represented in positions of influence don't feel the same economic pain that Americans do, the rest of us. Because of that, it makes them less likely to take steps that will alleviate your pain, but will actually make things worse. They're supporting Biden because they're getting richer. You're feeling pain. So the elites don't see this as really a problem because they're fine. A stunning 77% of elites and 89% of super elites support strict rationing of meat, gas, and electricity. Let me say that number again. 77% of elites and 89% of super elites support strict rationing of meat, gas, and electricity. 72% and 81% would ban gas-powered cars. 55% and 70% would prevent Americans from engaging in non-essential air travel. 47 and 55% believe the government affords Americans too much freedom. Holy cow. The rest of the country doesn't feel that way. The percentage of those who are not elites or super elites that would agree to any of those things is between 16 and 25%. 70% of elites, double the number of average Americans, and 89% of super elites say they trust the government to do the right thing. This is not a war against Republicans and Democrats. This is the elites versus everybody else. They don't see the world the same way at all. And I know this to be true. When you live in, let's say, Manhattan, you're living in, if you're living, anywhere near the park, you are not living with real people that understand and look at America the same way. The easiest way to say is New Jersey, which is just across the river, that's like hillbillies and hicks. They don't understand anything until they get to Los Angeles. They don't get it, and they put everything in one bucket. They don't get it, we get it, and the people in Los Angeles get it. The people on the coasts, everybody else is disposable. They don't add anything to our lives. What? We can do whatever we want here. We have everything we want here. What else matters? I mean, God forbid we do anything to London or Paris except get rid of some of the riffraff, because those are places we like to go to vacation at. This poll is absolutely stunning to me. So now take what you know. Again, let me just tell you again that they approve of Joe Biden by about 83%. 83% are getting better in their finances. They support by 77 and 89% of the super elites support the strict rationing of meat, gas, and electricity. 81 would ban the use of gas-powered cars. 70% would prevent Americans from engaging in non-essential air travel. And 55% believe the government affords Americans too much freedom. With that in mind, now let me tell you about Davos. Davos is putting together an exclusion list, a list that they're creating to demonize sources of sharing so-called disinformation. Now, what exactly is disinformation? Well, disinformation is real. It is the intent of the author to lie to a group of people to get them to believe something that isn't true. That's disinformation. It's intentional. Misinformation is not intentional. Okay? But now they have exclusion lists to demonetize, which means getting rid of all advertising, even banking access, anybody who is sharing so-called disinformation. The president and CEO of Internews, an international nonprofit that provides support to independent media outlets in more than 100 countries, addressing how to prevent the spread of what they consider inaccurate information. They talked and did a talk at the Davos conference panel, and the panel was called Defending Truth. Global trust in institutions is eroding, reflected in how 40% of people consistently trust news, empowering internet users with media information literacy, advancing information integrity, and enhancing transparency. It's vital for addressing the spread of false information. So the question was, what actions do stakeholders need to take to preserve a healthy trust ecosystem? Now, remember, we're not talking shareholders anymore because that's you. We're talking stakeholders. Those are the elected officials, the CEO of companies, the boards of directors, and the politicians, the global elite. Oh, I forgot. Also, the university systems. Those are the stakeholders. You don't have a vote. Your vote is when you pick one of these politicians. That's your voice. Now, they said the most effective way to keep people from being exposed to so-called inaccurate information is to develop a list or guides for advertisers that tell them where to and where not to spend. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Media Matters used to do this, and all of these lefty organizations, they do it because they threaten boycotts. They say, oh, if you're not with us, then you're against us. If you're with them, then you're our enemy. If you decide that their audience is worth your time and money, we know that those people are all deplorables. We know who they are, the unwashed masses. So if you want those people as customers, then we're against you. Now they are going to the global elites and the governments, and they are now saying to these stakeholders that you don't want to advertise there. The governments are giving people permission to be able to debank. So they put pressure on and say, this person spending a lot of time saying things that just aren't true. Like, I don't know, the jabs may have not been the best of ideas. You can't bank with those. And if they go to the advertisers and say, you got to drop your commercials from that show, they'll be debanked if they don't. You see how this blackmail works? Now listen to this. Disinformation makes money, and we need to follow that money. And we need to work with, in particular, the global advertising community. Those dollars are going to pretty bad content. So you can work really hard on exclusion lists or inclusion lists, but just focus on their ad dollars going to good news and information, the accurate and relevant news and information. Okay, so here's what Internews does. They train journalists and digital rights activists. They tackle disinformation and offer business expertise to help media outlets become financially sustainable. Look at the incentives. The organization aims to eliminate disinformation designed to manipulate elections, distort public debate, incite violence, or undermine public health. All of these things are good and noble causes. We just don't agree on what's true or not, what the public health is. I think by pointing out, hey, the testing of that jab, it's not what they say it is. Hey, I think it actually came from a lab that we helped fund in China. I believe that's the truth. Asking questions only leads you closer to the truth. They think that's disinformation. This is they say, a national and global security threat this year because of the elections. You need to shore up your credibility with everybody you know. You need to get rid of all of the things in your life that you might have done wrong or are doing wrong. Get them out into the open, clean them all up, make amends where you can so you don't have anything to fear. Then you need to start speaking out, but you need to be well researched. You're smart enough to figure things out. You don't immediately sign on to things that you're like, oh my gosh, here's the silver bullet, and it's exactly the answer I was looking for. Be cautious of those things. Do extra research. The things I tell you, I really want to be wrong. I really want to be wrong on these things. I hope that I am. But one thing that disinformation, the real purveyors of disinformation will say, don't ask any questions. You can't ask that question. You just accept this. You should ask questions of not only people you agree with, but people you disagree with. You should ask questions to the deepest questions of yourself. Because if you stop asking and talking to people who differ with you, then you grow arrogant and you become just like those people. You become so arrogant. I have nothing to learn from you. You're just a moron. You're beneath me. Did you go to Harvard? I did. No, I didn't. And that's why I'm still asking questions. You should always ask questions, and people who tell you not to, just to trust them, run from them. and don't become like them.